Hey, deserving listeners, we have a special guest with us back on the podcast to talk about 3 common mistakes that people make as they are starting their private practice. For those of you who aren't clinicians out there, private practice is when a clinician, a therapist, a counselor decides to become an entrepreneur and start their own business, hang a shingle, as they say, rent an office or work out of their home office and see clients. And they get to take the whole money. They get all the money from the proceeds. I don't know how to say it. Maybe Laura will help me out. And you also have to pay for all your own expenses and whatnot. And it's a crazy kind of situation because counselors aren't inherent business-minded people who are, super comfortable with paying taxes and with advertising themselves and that kind of thing. And so Laura has been on the podcast before talking about her workshop that she has, this wonderful workshop that helps people with starting their private practice. And she has a new workshop coming up July 28th, which is a Saturday.
Saturday, July 28th, 2018.
2018. And is it on Mercer Island again?
It is, Mercer Island Community Center.
And you want to go to what website to register for it?
www.openyourpractice.com.
Openyourpractice.com. And it is, usually it's not like dozens of people. It's usually, a small group and you got to help people.
Intentionally smaller to be interactive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I thought I asked her to come on the podcast and talk about 3 common mistakes that people make when they're starting their private practice. Let's introduce the podcast. This is the podcast called Psychology in Seattle. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Laura?
My name is Laura Mathews-Gransberry. I am also...
Oh, you're going with the...
Yeah, I'm trying to make this transition. It's very... a lot of people in my personal life have made that switch over to Gransberry very easily. But students still call me Mathews and my clients still... So
you got married.
Yeah, we got married last September and actually just got back from our honeymoon last week. So... trying to make this transition, and I'm going to hyphenate for a while. I don't really know.
I get it.
Tough thing, I guess.
So for a while we had John Cougar, and then for a while we had John Cougar Mellencamp.
Indeed.
And then after a while he decided just to go John Mellencamp.
Yes.
And, hence all the confusion. So That's a wonderful choice, Laura.
I'm just confusing people. It's fine.
And who are you and what are you?
I'm a therapist and an instructor at Antioch University, Seattle.
So what are the 3 common mistakes that people make as they venture into private practice?
I can list all 3 and then we'll go into detail. Does that sound good? The first one I've got here is failing to build a team around you. That's mistake number 1, which I'll talk about in more detail.
Interesting. I'm intrigued.
Yes. Mistake number 2 is has to do with marketing and hanging your shingle, as you indicated, and sort of, I've heard this term hope marketing, which always kind of resonated with me, just this hope that the phone will ring. I've put my name out there. I've told my colleagues that, I'm doing this and I hope they refer to me, or, my website should be enough. I hope people call. So without really networking, it's not that you won't get clients. It's just, it's a lot harder. So
yeah, I had that attitude when I started out, and I see people make that mistake too. It is completely delusional that style of marketing is going to work at all.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe one of your cousins will refer a client to you, but in my experience, the people that you just happen to know are, wonderful supporters, but they're terrible at referring. One, because they don't necessarily know people looking for therapists.
Right.
And the people that know them don't know that they have a cousin that's a therapist. So it's a pretty bad model that is doomed to fail. So you want to get into marketing. What's the third thing that they do?
The third thing is cash flow management. You've got your practice up and running, and now you're taking clients and taking money and taking insurance. And what do you do with all of that? And how do you set money aside for taxes? How do you navigate this? If you are taking insurance, this ebb and flow of the billings that come in, how do you cover yourself in the meantime? And I know you've got some stories about, when the economy crashed and everyone sort of pulled back, and, if you don't have reserves, how do you weather those storms? So, honestly, and just a day-to-day cash flow management as well. Being proactive in your business, treating it like a business.
Right. Like if you're a McDonald's owner, for example, the thing that I tell people is, I tell people that eventually what you need to do is you need at least like $10,000 to $20,000 ready to go for the bad times.
Right.
For the, the ups and downs. And when I say that to students in particular, they laugh at me.
Right.
Because they're like, I don't know if I'm going to earn $20,000
ever
in a year.
I felt that way. Yes.
But then I tell them, if you're in private practice, eventually you're going to be making 80 plus, per year.
Right.
And, you sock away $5,000 every, few months or something. Because,
right.
because $100,000 a year, that's, $8,000 a month. If you're still living like a college student, then, your expenses shouldn't be commensurate with $8,000 a month,
right.
Like that. And so, so eventually you want to get to a place where you have $10,000 or $20,000. That's what I did. Not because I just wanted a huge bank account, but because there were times when, like in '08, after the housing crisis and the economy crashed, all my clients basically, terminated.
Right.
I mean, not all of them, but or many of them just sort of naturally terminated, and I didn't get any new clients. And I think I said on the last podcast, there's 1 week where I had 2 appointments, and then it snowed, and they didn't come.
Yes.
And so that 20, 15 grand just over time, and I started to really watch how much I spent,
right.
over that time, and So it didn't drain as quickly as normal, but it definitely drained over time because so people like, well, that's crazy, like that I would need that much cash. But if you're a McDonald's owner, for example, there's going to be times when you're going to have ups and downs. Like a new burger shack opens up down the street, and everyone's
right.
super excited about that, and your entire business dries up for a time. And you still have to pay the electricity bill. You still have to pay your manager,
your rent,
your employees.
Yes.
And you can't just say, "Oh, I'm not making any revenue this month. Well, I guess I'm not going to pay my bills." And it's
not advised to do
right.
that.
So if you're a business owner, especially if you're the main income or only income, then you absolutely need that. Having said that, there are a lot of people who are married who have spouses who have salaries, for example.
Right.
And if your business dries up, then it's not that big of a deal to you. And, God bless you if you have that option, I suppose.
It's a good situation to be in.
Anyway, so number one was what?
Number one was failing to build a team.
So what do you mean by that?
Basically, private practice doesn't mean solo practice and shouldn't mean solo practice. There's a lot of value in creating a network of people around you that you can lean on and lean into. Everyone from a supervisor to a consult group, making sure that you have not that you have to have a lawyer on retainer per se and pay them, but you should have someone identified to contact if something ever goes wrong. Know who's in your community that can help with those kinds of things.
What about the introverts out there?
The introverts, meaning
that they are terrified, or it's just not their routine to network or reach out. Because that's what it was like for me when I was starting out. The idea that I would just, because, for a time, before I worked at Antioch full time, I was completely isolated, and for the most part. And
in private practice?
In private practice, yeah. I mean, I knew some people, but there were times when it was extremely isolating. And the notion of just sort of reaching out, because if you don't know people naturally, then you kind of have to push yourself on other people, so who do you know that knows a lot about the law? And it's someone or do you know of a lawyer? Like that leap is just a little bit for some people.
Right.
Like, do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, it's a lot easier today than it maybe was when you were starting out. With social media, there's a group on Facebook called Therapists. I don't know if you're a part of that, specifically for the Seattle region. And I know that
I think I am. Yeah.
I know that there's other ones in other cities, and yeah, you can post for recommendations. Do you know somebody that works with these people? I need legal advice, and you'll get sort of a string of responses. So it's even less daunting, I would say, than emailing somebody directly and going that route. But that
still
is
a leap,
still
though.
It is a leap.
Yeah.
And my encouragement is to take the leap, to practice that. That's why it's a common mistake, because I think fear drives a lot of that for people.
Yeah.
And getting past that, we encourage our clients to face their fears every day. So I'm going to encourage you all to do it as well. I had to. It's certainly something that I had to face. I think this lends itself to introvert personalities, right? I kind of joke that we all lock ourselves in a room and talk to one person for hours on end. Big groups are scary. So it's not intuitive, but it's a muscle that you can exercise and flex, and it's important and necessary because you'll do better work. If you feel like you have a core group around you, you're more free to do the work with your clients that you want to and that they need.
Mm-hmm. What else could you do to build a team other than, Facebook and other things you've mentioned?
Mm-hmm. I think there's leaning into the people you went to school with as well. I don't know if it's a unique situation that Antioch is so community oriented, but I know that it is. And I am still friends with people that I went to school with, and I network with them. I talk to them. I consult with them. People that I have had jobs with. I worked at Eating Recovery Center for a long time and Center for Discovery, and I have colleagues from those communities that I am in consult group with. So tapping into the people that have walked some leg of the journey with you is important, and I think safer, in terms of making that leap. It feels a little easier to call up somebody that you've known for a while and say, hey, I'm trying to put a consult group together. What do you think about meeting once a month and talking about cases and clients, and things like that? But it's really important connection is really the message here.
Yeah. Not only for well-being and self-care, obviously, and better practice, but also getting clients, getting referrals and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, just to maybe put it in concrete terms for myself and people I know, and I talk about this sometimes, there are people, not me, but there are people who have consult groups that meet, a couple times a month, mm-hmm. that last for decades.
Yes.
And these are 6 clinicians who know each other really well and, go through life transitions with each other, and
yes.
obviously consult about cases and
mm-hmm.
refer to each other and have ideas about private practice and stuff. So there's that. Then the specifics of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of. Yeah, I would say maybe every other day someone posts an interesting question,
right.
I think there was a recent, there's the therapist one in the Seattle area, but there's also the Antioch Peer Consult Group. Are you a part of that one?
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, I see a lot of stuff from there, and it's a closed group. But anyway, someone just posted something the other day about how to design a super bill,
right.
like how do you do, because there's so many weird things in our
terminology.
Yeah. And forms, and because you're communicating with insurance companies or sometimes lawyers, and there's no information out there. There's no book about, here's what you do, and if you did get taught it in school, it was very brief,
yes.
if at all, probably never taught it. And so you need guidance around, how to do this thing. And so there's that. Then
and that's where our class comes in, because we teach you how to. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yes, please.
We teach you how to do this. We teach you how to build the team, who you need, how to reach out, what take the fear. This class is really designed to take the fear out of this really what might feel like jumping over the Grand Canyon leap into private practice, and building a team around you and having those people makes it less scary.
Do you provide actual like referrals or anything, or is it just advice about how to get those people?
It's really advice about how to get those people. I talked about you in the last class, and that you're sort of my touchstone in terms of if something really went, and we've talked about this before, if something really happened significant that I'm trying to think of an example. I had a colleague that had something come up with her client, diagnosed with a terminal illness. She didn't really know what to do. And I thought about like, oh my gosh, if that happened and I was having trouble processing, I would probably call you or say like, I ran into something and I do not know how to deal with this. And having somebody there to bounce that off of, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes, is so important. We talk about the importance of a CPA. I know you do your own taxes, but I am pro CPA.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I wonder how much money I'd save if I actually had because how much do tax people cost per year?
It varies. It's generally around $500 a year to do quarterly taxes. Some I've seen charge up to $800 a year, but that is tax deductible because it is an expense for your business.
And the service obviously involves filing federal taxes and I guess state and city, as we have in Seattle, but also like coaching through the year about what to keep track of and what to maybe spend on and how to depreciate stuff and all that kind of stuff.
All the things that you would never think of, like how to depreciate your office furniture and your computer and write that off, and things that you are buying and needing for your business anyway, and how to make the most of the money that you are making.
Right. And I find that a lot of people in private practice because I, supervise a lot of people in private practice. And so we'll talk about taxes at times. And I'm not, although I do have my bachelor's degree is in business. And
I didn't know that.
I did take a lot of accounting, actually.
That's funny. So you might have a better comfort level than say, my comfort level with taxes and accounting, even though my mom's an accountant, I should know better. But my comfort level was nil. It freaks me out.
It's scary. It's scary. Yeah. I mean, with the new products online, H&R Block and TurboTax, I believe, they walk you through it. And, but you definitely, I mean, I have to, whenever I do my taxes every year, I know I have to sit down for a whole day, without any interruption. Right. Because there's so many like little roads that you have to go down. You're like, oh, that's right. Now, how do I find that figure? Especially when you own a house and you have a home office and you have a car that you use for business sometimes. And okay.
And the mileage and it's just.
So having an actual accountant is a good expense and might actually even save you money.
I think it pays for itself is my plug for that.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things that I find when I'm talking to supervisees, recent grads that are in private practice, that I'll say something like, so, you can write off, you're paying me for supervision. You can write that off, and they're like, I can? Right. And the level, the light that shines in their eyes, like, wait. And I'm like, yeah, you can write off like so many things. You can write off your workshop, for example.
Yes, if you take this workshop, it is I think, and I'm not 100% clear on the actual time frame, but I think it is 6 months before you start the business, you can write off sort of lead up expenses. So if you take the workshop and open inside of 6 months, or maybe it's a year, I'm not.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's more like 6 months. You can write it off even if it's not. The business isn't technically open yet. Right,
and obviously, if your business is open and you take the workshop,
of course,
100%, you can write off. Yeah. So, so once I learned over time what I could write off, I keep all my receipts and little things like you buy a new keyboard for your computer, right? Like if you do work on that computer, that's it's a work computer, and so it's you can write that off, and every little bit counts. Okay. So building a team, having a CPA, having someone that you can consult with that knows a lot about ethics or an experienced person that you can bounce stuff off of.
Right.
Because another part of it is the trust that they'll get back to you, right?
Yeah.
Because you kind of need someone to get back to you quickly. You can't wait a couple weeks for them to randomly.
So let's say you run into something clinically and you don't have a consult group and you don't have a trusted supervisor or a mentor in this case, and you need maybe some feedback in the next 24 to 48 hours, and you reach out to a colleague that you haven't talked to in a year and they're busy in their life and there's, I'll just get back to them at the end of the week. And now you're panicking. Now there's this moment of, I'm isolated, I'm in private practice. Why did I do this? And the fear just runs rampant.
Right.
And so guarding against that, we teach you how to guard against that.
Great.
Yeah.
And so what's the next tip?
The next tip is around marketing. This hope marketing
right.
concept, right?
So it's a mistake that people do.
Oh yeah, So hanging your shingle and hoping, and this is, again, there's so much fear involved in this, and there was for me as well, which was the birth of this workshop. There was so much fear. I'm lucky to have a partner that was so steadfast in the belief that I could do this and push. You can do it, cheerleader all the way. He was wonderful in that. And I'm not sure what would have gotten done if it wasn't for him, but I was lucky there, and he helped me with a lot of that fear. And once I got it up and running, I realized how crippling that fear can be, in this process, and specifically around the marketing, because as we talked about, we tend to be introverts in this field, and selling ourselves is very scary. Yeah. So a lot of people, I'm going to start private practice and I'm going to hang my shingle and I'm going to put up my website, and then I'm going to watch my phone and hope it rings. And that can be really, again, I think you might get a client or two, but maybe
yeah.
You will build so much slower than you can,
Yeah. And some
necessary.
And some of the clients will actually not be good. For example,
right. Well, ideal for you. Yeah.
Right. One, like when I started out, that's what I did. I did the hope marketing strategy, and the clients that I got were either kind of like pity cases where someone knew I was trying to start my practice, and they're like, well, this niece of mine probably needs therapy, so I'll sort of harangue her to see you, Right. And that's not a good situation.
No.
Or two, they're so close to you that you actually can't treat them, which happened to me as well. One of my very first clients, at the end of the session, I suddenly, as she's talking with me, and it just, because I was starting out, I didn't think to ask her how she was referred to me.
Right.
At the end of the session, she revealed a little detail about her life, and I was like, oh, wait a second. So so-and-so is your sister? And she's like, yep. And I said, I can't see you. Your sister is one of my best friends.
Oh no.
And I see your sister socially almost every weekend, you know what I mean? And I had to terminate with her at the end of the session. So the hope or the networking among the people will result in these kinds of referrals. Right.
Yeah, and it's not ideal. And being, gosh, that place of hope, I'm picturing myself there again, and it was very difficult it takes a lot of grit, to get up, to go to those networking events, to sign up for things like Seattle Counselors Association and go to those monthly meetings and walk up to a group of people and introduce yourself and ask what they're doing and talk about what you're doing. That takes gumption. I'm never going to deny that, but it's such an integral part of building your business and building a successful practice.
Yeah, I like the way you're describing it. It's because I was the same when I started out. I was just like, I just want things to happen, and and once I hope the world just knows that I'm a really good therapist, or I'm really trying hard,
right?
And I have very good intentions. And really, to some extent, when I was starting my private practice, the landscape was quite different. I mean, the internet was not ubiquitous.
Right.
So for example, I didn't have a website until I didn't need one. You know, like eventually I learned that you have to have a website because you have to publish your disclosure statement like online. It's like, I think it's a part of HIPAA or something. And it couldn't be a part of HIPAA. Anyway, the point is that I learned that, you know, ethically you're supposed to have your disclosure statement available to anybody, basically. And so that's when I designed a website. You know what I mean? So for the first, 15 years of my career in a private practice, I didn't even have a website because really no one had websites because that wasn't really a thing, you know?
Right.
And it's just a wonder how I managed to get clients actually back then. But now obviously like that's a huge thing, and website, I mean, you might not get clients from your website, but people, when they get referred to you, they're going to go to your website, right? And how that website looks is I think critical. You know?
I agree.
Yeah.
I've seen some really great ones, and I've seen some ones that are very mediocre.
Well, the thing I always laugh is that they always have that stack of rocks. You know what I mean? There's like, and then a babbling brook.
I know.
And then they name which is fine, I guess. Maybe that appeals to some people, and then they name their counseling practice something like, what would it be like, what's a typical name? Like enhancement therapy or something, or
I know what you mean.
Wellspring. That would be a good one. Wellspring.
That's a company, actually.
Okay.
They do continuing education.
And it's, maybe it appeals to some people. I don't know, but all I know is I think what happens is therapists, because they're not marketers, and they're not experts on web design and everything. And so they probably just pick a template and something that looks like, okay, that passes for a website, and then they just set it and forget it. And there's so many more things you could be doing,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they make it, there's a lot of companies that make it very easy to set up a website. The website is the first step in the marketing piece. Having a place for people to go. We talk about this in our class, how to build it, where to go. We provide all the links for all of these things, how to get pictures without having to credit and copyright infringement and all of this stuff. Like, we go into a lot of detail about how to do these things and take the difficulty out of it. And they make it pretty easy. These companies make it pretty easy to build a good looking website. But we also talk about
like Wix and Squarespace.
Yeah, definitely. And our Open Your Practice website was actually built with Wix. And it was a very easy process. Their customer service is fantastic. So we talk about all those things. And we also talk about what to name your practice and how that matters.
Yeah. Well, what's your advice about that?
It was funny, the last workshop that we did.
Well, I'm going to pause you because we have to take a break. So
okay, I'll talk about it.
It'll be a teaser.
Okay.
Hey, deserving listeners, we're really excited to have Talkspace back sponsoring the podcast. Talkspace is an online therapy organization that hooks you up with therapists in your state, because it has to be, legal and ethical, in which you can interact with over the internet, over video, over email, over chat, and get therapy. And it's relatively cheaper than than in-office therapy. You are actually working with a fully licensed person. They only hire therapists who are fully licensed, meaning that they're not recent grads. So they have a lot of experience. And they also train all of their therapists for that form of therapy, because online therapy is, it's different. It has some different elements to it. And so they make sure that they train all of them. My former student and supervisee, Shannon McFarland, is actually in charge of all that and, swears by it all the time. Even Irvin Yalom, who I've talked to, one of my heroes, actually is working with Talkspace. At first, Irvin Yalom thought that online therapy was ridiculous, as most of us did when we first heard it. But Irvin Yalom, you can teach an old dog new tricks. He not only saw the benefits of online therapy, but even decided to work for them. And he works for Talkspace right now, or he consults with them or something. And so it's not for everybody. Some people want in-office therapy, but some people don't. Some people want... So the benefits of Talkspace style is that you get to talk with your therapist almost every day. I think Monday through Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe every day. I don't know. And you get to interact wherever you're at, right? If you travel a lot, if you're busy, it's a lot more convenient to, in the middle of your workday, you could just fire off an email and get a response pretty quickly, rather than having to wait for a therapy session and then you have to drive there and find parking and blah, blah, blah. So there's pros and cons. And for some people, they really like online therapy. So if you're interested, I encourage you to go to Talkspace.com and use the promo code Kirk. You have to use the promo code Kirk because when you use the promo code, it signals to Talkspace that you're one of my listeners, which means that they will continue to sponsor the podcast. And it's a pretty big deal when someone actually just flat out sponsors a podcast. It provides a lot of funds, which of course means I can spend more time on deep dives and whatnot. So, which I would like to cut back even more on my regular work so I could spend more time on the podcast. So if you're interested in Talkspace, you're interested in online therapy. The other thing is if you use the promo code Kirk, you get a discount, which means that, try it out for a few weeks and see how it is for you. Maybe it's not for you, but even if you just sign up for a month or something, it is enough reason for Talkspace to continue to sponsor us. So again, Talkspace.com, use the promo code Kirk for a discount, and that will be good for everybody. You get a chance to see what that's like. Talkspace gets some business. Therapists, frankly, these therapists are in private practice, right? Talkspace doesn't hire a therapist, they just contract with them. So these therapists, early career therapists are getting some work. And if you use promo code Kirk, I get, I guess kind of in a sense, kind of a kickback. So again, Talkspace.com, promo code Kirk. I didn't choose the promo code Kirk. I would have thought of some other promo code, but they decided to go with Kirk, which is kind of narcissistic, but we all know that I'm on the spectrum. Okay, back to the show. All right, welcome back from the break. We're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast, do so now. Go to patreon.com. Become a patron of the podcast, and you get access to all of our premium content. There's hundreds of episodes along those lines. We just did, I just did about 10 hours deep dive on narcissistic personality disorder, and that took me months to do, if not years in some ways. And so when you become a patron, you get access to those episodes along with other ones as well. Also, we have our 10-year anniversary show coming up August 11th, 2018.
That's exciting.
Are you coming?
I am now.
You came to the last one.
Yeah, I came to the live show.
Yeah. So this is a similar thing,
yeah,
if you're interested, but it's not on campus. It's going to be at North City Bistro in Shoreline,
great,
Washington. And if you come, you can meet Laura. So continue what you were saying about what do you call your practice? What's your advice?
So my advice is to make it as simple as you can, but also in the name, say what you do. Right. So the problem with the babbling brook psychology,
corrective experience therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. So simple example, the name of my practice is Family Stability Counseling, because when I opened my practice, my husband asked me very pointed questions about the kind of clients that I wanted to see and the kind of people that I wanted to help. What was the goal? And I said, I love family therapy. I want to help families become more stable. And so in that dialogue of working through that, we landed on Family Stability Counseling because that's what I really wanted to help with.
That's fascinating. It's so obvious, but that's never occurred to me.
Yeah.
That you would actually, it's so obvious, right? That your name should reflect what you do, mm-hmm. right? And that never crossed my mind. Right. And I don't think any therapists do that.
Right.
Like they call it Wellspring or
right.
Babbling Brook therapy.
And as a result, the people that call me are families, people that I see individuals as well, but they call me because they're struggling with family of origin issues.
Okay.
So I have a full practice of family work, whether it's with individuals, marriage, couple counseling.
So what if someone wanted to have a practice in which they saw adults and couples? Like, would they call themselves individual/couples therapy Seattle or something? Like
no. But come to the class and we'll work through how to get there. It's really
because you might have to limit, I suppose. Like if
you want to limit the words in like I think you said like 7 words just
right.
then. Like,
maybe it's like relational therapy Seattle or something.
Yeah.
So I guess it'd be a hard choice because on some level, especially if you have a kind of broad focus,
right,
you might have to limit yourself a little bit. But you get such a gain by having at least some name that has a distinctive, attraction for people to
Correct.
say, oh, this is a name that obviously. And the other thing that I tell people is like, even if you've never seen a client before, if you have a website and you have a name and you have a license, they'll assume you've been doing it for a while.
It's true.
So the very first client that came to you for family, stability counseling,
Yes.
FSC.
Yep, that's how it's abbreviated in all of my shorthand notes. Yes,
is the first person who came to you, they're like, well, I mean, this place is called Family Stability Counseling.
Right.
They know what they're doing. Now you did because you'd been working in the field
for a while, yes,
for a long time. But what they didn't know is that you were their very first family stability
private practice.
Yeah. And so my point there is like for people not to be afraid to market themselves as competent and able, because they are. They have a master's degree, a doctorate degree. They've been through internship, and they are
therapists.
They're
yes.
legit,
yes.
and to lean into that and to be that.
Yes.
Inadequacy will never end. The feeling of being an imposter or not good enough. All of us, grew up in families where, criticism wasn't always, received wonderfully well. I mean,
right.
How many times, do you criticize a 10-year-old and like, thank you so much for giving me constructive feedback?
Right.
10-year-olds take negative feedback negatively. They're very upset. So we all, as a, species, especially in such a squishy field like therapy that has very little concrete markers for success, this sort of thing.
Yes.
So it never ends, but don't wait for that feeling to end for you to stand up proudly and say, this is what
me.
I'm
doing.
Yeah, I can. I'm fairly confident I can help you if you come to me, that kind of thing. Anyway.
Right.
Okay, so that's a mistake they make, is the hope marketing strategy where they just hang a shingle and help, and then your workshop helps to work on strategies for marketing that go way beyond the hope strategy.
Absolutely. We have a whole big section of the workshop is dedicated to marketing and how to do it and what to say and how to go about it, how to make business cards and put yourself out there. You have to tell people what you do is the baseline here. There's, think of and it applies to every industry. I called a plumber today. Why did I call the plumber? Because I researched online, got a recommendation. He had a website, whatever, and I called. You have to tell, there's this element of if you don't go out there and tell people
right.
what you do, they're not going to know.
So what happened to, why do you need
Oh,
a plumber?
we're remodeling our condo. It's not a big deal. Oh. I need a bathtub installed. It's nothing fancy.
Is it, so it's not a fancy bathtub?
It's
clawfoot?
No, I wish. No.
Oh.
It's just a normal
bathtub.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, So I find that it requires a lot of different angles, right? So you have website, SEO, cards, maybe pamphlets, ads that you might...
Press kits. We talk about press kits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your headshot, obviously. Mm-hmm. Any videos you might have, going on podcasts.
Right.
Getting on radio.
I'm telling people about what we're doing this very moment. Yes.
Getting on TV. I mean, I supervised someone who got on Channel 13 here in Seattle.
Yeah.
And was their weekly correspondent on relationship issues.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
Oh, well.
Do I know her?
Shannon. Was she in your section of case consultation?
No.
Oh, anyway. And she, got clients that way because you're on the news, you're behind the anchor desk, and you're talking about relationship issues for 3 minutes every Friday or something.
Right.
And that's because she reached out to them and said, hey, do you need any different websites like Psychology Today and Thumbtack and other kinds of things that you can do. Obviously, Facebook, Reddit. There's Facebook ads, obviously, you can take out. It's just a lot of different angles. I had a supervisee who took out an ad in a high school basketball program.
Interesting.
Yeah, so she paid for a high school that was near where she was,
right.
she was a family therapist, and she took a full glossy color ad in this basketball program that said, having trouble with your teenager, come to me,
Right.
And, we didn't know if it actually, I can't remember if it actually amounted to anything, but, that was her strategy of just like, trial and error. It's worth the $300 if I get 2 clients or even 1 client. It'll pay for itself. So,
right.
Just all these weird angles, and
other providers as well. Doctors, psychiatrists, ARNPs, people that
principals of a elementary school,
right?
Yeah,
PTA people. There's a lot of times people can only do so much, and the answer is therapy, and they need people to refer to. So you need to put your services in front of as many people, as many eyes as you can, so you can be at the top of the list.
Yeah, what I tell people is when they're first starting out in private practice, they have a lot of time in their hands because they're not working very much. And so I say, if you spend 2 or 3 hours a week, even just thinking about this, and eventually that changes into actual action, you'll be way ahead of the game in terms of like marketing.
Right.
But what a lot of people do is because they're terrified or shy, they just don't do anything, or they feel like there's nothing that they can do. They don't know there's options, or they feel like the options are so remote or beyond their capabilities or something. They just don't even start,
Yeah.
And so so remind us when your workshop is again.
July 28th, 2018. So this month.
And they go to openyourpractice.com.
Openyourpractice.com. Yes.
Okay. And what's the third mistake that people make?
The third mistake is around finances, cash flow management. We talk a lot about the intake of funds and how to allocate those funds. And we go through, my husband set up a few flowchart models of this is what you could do, but this is going to cost you a lot of money and you're going to lose a lot of money. And if you're not setting things aside for taxes and not consulting with the CPA, sort of the pitfalls of that, and then a middle of the road model, this is ideal, and then this is the best model. And he's built a timeline spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, which anybody that takes the class will have access to. We give it to them. So you can plug in your own data. This is what I did this month. This is what I did this month. And it sort of projects out. It's like a cash flow model, I guess is the best way to say that. So we do a really deep dive into how to manage the financial aspect of your business, because you are a business owner and that's a huge part of it. It's not just, when you work for somebody else, they do all of that and then you get the check, right? Which is nice.
Right.
Sometimes.
Which is why some people don't want to go into private
100%. And that works for some people. And, but this is, when you're doing it this way, you're the one that has to do all of that. And that can be pretty daunting.
Yeah. I was talking to a supervisee recently and I mentioned quarterly taxes, and she's in private practice. And she's like, oh yeah, what's that again?
Oh no. I
know. And I was like, you're not paying your quarterly taxes?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I didn't really, and I said, one, you can actually be fined by the IRS.
And it's a percentage, yeah.
For not doing it. So you're throwing money away
Yep.
by not doing it. And two, the so quarterly taxes for those people who don't know is when you're in when you're an entrepreneur and you're of a certain level of revenue, you pay the IRS what in 4 installments throughout the year.
Estimated quarterly taxes is what it's called.
And what you're trying to do is you're trying to guess what you're eventually going to have to pay for the whole year, and you're just spreading that out in an actual equal amounts is the typical way to do it. So if you're going to pay $25,000 in taxes, or say $24,000 in taxes come April 15, you have to pay $6,000 in March or April, $6,000 in June, September. For some reason, the quarterly taxes for quarter 2 and 3 you pay a half month early, which is bizarre.
Right.
But anyway, and so if you don't pay those, then you have this massive payment. So not only you're going to get fined potentially by the IRS, but 2, you will have this, you'll have to write a check to the IRS for like $15,000. And most people don't have that cash laying around. They've spent it is the other problem. And so now they're looking at trying to get an extension or selling their car to like pay their taxes, when all you have to do is do what everyone else does, which is following the law, and that is paying your quarterly taxes and budgeting, And the as we were talking about it, the thing that I landed on that seemed to resonate with her, which I said, because a lot of her clients pay $100. And so I said, when you get that $100, 20 of those dollars is not yours.
Right.
It's Donald Trump's, So you have to,
yes,
you have to, think of it that way, that it's not yours. The federal government gets about 20% of everything that you make. And so when you have a bank account and you say you have $6,000 in your checking account and you haven't paid your taxes yet, $1,500 in that bank account is not yours.
Right.
And that's a very weird way to think,
It is. And you have to get very disciplined about it as well. And we talk about that in the workshop, how to set up your bank accounts so that these flowchart models that we talk about in the class, how they flow into the different bank accounts. So you name them different things. You essentially just open a bunch of checking accounts and you name them, or savings accounts, and you name them different things, and you have the money flow in there. So you're seeing it, but it's not yours to touch, right? So you should have a savings account, like an overall savings account, like we were talking about for snowstorms in the middle of a recession. And you should have a savings account for your taxes that are due quarterly, so that when that you need to do that, you either send it to your CPA, or if you're doing it by yourself, you write the check and put it in the envelope and put it in the mail, and it's there and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. The other barrier, that's a wonderful idea. I don't do that. I am of the organization that I use Excel like a lot. Like it just keeps track of everything right away, and then come tax time, I just look at the revenue essentially and sort of take a guess at how much I'm gonna. Anyway, the point is that I'm sure your system is much more flaw proof, I guess,
fluid maybe,
to people who are starting out. I've cobbled together my system over time,
right?
But the other problem that I see with people with taxes is that I find that there's a lot of people who are basically in denial about taxes. Like even when they were salary people, but they could kind of be in denial because it didn't matter, because their employer was taking money out all the time, and so they only had to really face the fact of taxes come April, and these people tend to be the April 15 filers,
right.
And so
I used to be that person.
I'm not. I am as soon as possible. I love doing my taxes because I want to get it off my right. My situation. Plus, once you become successful, it's actually kind of interesting to see how things are going. You're like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
That's how much I made this year. Anyway, so people will, even with their salary, they'll wait till April 15, and then then because they're like, I hope I don't owe anything. I hope I don't owe anything. And then the last minute comes, and lo and behold, they owe something,
right?
And they don't have it, and it's because they've just been avoiding it this whole time.
They're hoping.
Yeah, they're just in denial, and I get it. It's upsetting, but particularly if you're gonna be in private practice, like that shit has got to stop. And I just flat out just say that to my supervisees. You know?
Yeah.
So the supervisee who was going through this, I was just like, I'm guessing it's because you're an avoider of taxes. You avoid it, and I'm telling you, like that shit has got to stop, because one, you're gonna end up paying more money in the end. Two, you're probably not saving your receipts the way you should be. Three, you're going to be in so much pain come next April because you haven't been paying your quarterly taxes that it could ruin your life.
Yeah.
You know, think about the best case scenario is you get an extension, and now you have $20,000 bill of the feds that's growing in interest, by the way,
right?
And it's hanging over your head, and you want to kill yourself because of this debt that you're into the federal government.
Right.
It's the worst, you know. And,
I see this cash flow management as a self-care piece.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's an emotional leap that some people have to make around, like, okay, I now accept that taxes are happening,
right?
Whether I want to acknowledge it or not, taxes are happening, and I need to accept that, and it's a part of my life.
Right.
You know, it's like taking out the garbage. Like, you know, some people, they look at the dishes in the sink and they just want to go in denial about it. You know,
right.
We all overcome that with maturity. Like, okay, I know I don't want to do the dishes, but I have to, so might as well get on it. Taxes are the same thing. You have to rise up and say, I'm an adult now, and I have to pay my taxes, and it's a part of my life. I accept it, you know, because so there's a transition that I see people go through is once they kind of accept it, every time they pay taxes, or every time April 15th comes around, they freak out anyway. So even if they're just sort of accepting of taxes, they're still like depressed and angry and anxious about it, because I think it's because they've wished that they won't have to do it. You know, they haven't really accepted the role, you know. Like for me, I'm at the place now where, like I said, I kind of like doing my taxes, like because what other choice do I have? Do you know what I mean?
It's a perception shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about that that's like the opening of our class, really, is that if you are going to go on this endeavor and take this leap, this emotion, I think you called it like an emotional acceptance or emotional shift or something, but we frame it in this perception shift from salaried job, which is where that mindset comes from, that training that you don't ever see, that like it just comes off the top. So the only thing, when you have a salary job, you look at that. I mean, I do it still. I'm salaried in Antioch, so I'm like, oh, there's in the little window, you know, like that's all I look at, and that's all anybody's looked at for X amount of time. You know, we've had jobs for ever, and when you're so used to that, and then now you have to shift your mind into a business owner mindset, that's an actionable, intentional process.
Right.
And we talk about that in the workshop, about how to go about doing that, how to create this shift from I'm a salary person that works for somebody else to I'm a business owner that works for myself. And we deep dive into that a bit as well, because you're absolutely right. It's a thing.
Yeah. And I hate seeing people suffer for reasons that are due to their perception and their attitude, you know?
Right.
Because it's like when I see people suffering about taxes in a given year, unless something anomalous is happening, like they lost their job or something, but if it's just routine taxes and they're suffering and they're upset and they're stressed out, I'm like, unless you change the way you think about this is all going to happen again next April. You know, your life is going to be ruined once a year. You know,
right?
Unless you like have a way,
of distress.
Yeah, unless you sort of accept the fact that it's happening. You know, there's a saying that says the only thing inevitable in life is death and taxes. You know, it's like there's not a lot you can depend on in the universe, and two are death and taxes. And so why, you know, be upset about it? It breaks my heart to see people upset about something that is just a part of life, I guess, you know. And if the other thing that I tell people is, if you're paying 20 grand in taxes, that meant you made.
That's what came into my mind when you were saying this.
That means
that's a good thing.
Yeah, the fact that you have to pay taxes meant that you
that
made.
means you have a successful private practice.
Right. And
yes.
so by definition, if you're paying a bunch of money in taxes, you've made a bunch of money from your practice. And so you should have that extra money. It's not like the government just fines you 20 grand a year.
Right.
You know, it's like it's a percentage of what you made. And so if you haven't budgeted for it, then, you know, it's your fault. You know, you were given that money and you didn't think of it in the way that you should be. Anyway, I wonder if my attitude about, because I feel like I adjusted fairly quickly. I don't adjust to other things fairly quickly, but I adjusted to this. And maybe it's because when I was young, I was an ice cream man. And, you know, like when you drive around neighborhoods.
Yes, with the song in the truck.
Yeah. And
I did not know that.
And it was set up as a business. So
interesting.
The Ice Cream Joe was the franchise. And so I would go to the Ice Cream Joe headquarters. Mm-hmm. It was in Lake City. And you rent the truck, you buy the ice cream wholesale.
Yeah.
And then you buy your own gas and everything. And then you go to your neighborhood. And then you can charge whatever you want to charge.
Interesting.
You're a business.
Yeah.
And then when you get back to the headquarters, you can sell your unused ice cream back at wholesale. So it's all private practice, you know, entrepreneur. I'm 19 years old.
Right.
Driving around South Everett, you know, da-da-da-dun-da-dun-da-da. And there were days when I made a killing, like a day like today is a, you know, beautiful Seattle weather day. I would make a lot.
Yeah.
But there would be days when it's raining and no one wants it when it's raining, or very few. And I would lose money because I would be renting the truck and, you know, all
paying
that kind
the
of
gas.
stuff. Yeah. Yep. And so I wonder if that's maybe where it comes from. And then I had to pay taxes, you know, for that at the end.
So you've been doing this since a very young age. So you're a little more attuned to what that takes then, probably.
Well, any final thoughts about the mistakes, these 3 common mistakes?
Yeah, I think these are the big 3. There's certainly more, and this class is designed to help with that and take the fear out of these big hangups that I think clinicians innately know are there, but don't know what to do about it. So we're sort of the solution to that problem. We're going to tell you what to do about it and how to fix it and what to avoid.
I mean, it sounds like you have a very specific advice, like exactly what kinds of bank accounts, you know, and this is the flow chart of your cash, and like
100%.
That's pretty interesting.
It's highly detailed, highly specific. You get a checklist. You know, that was the big, when we sat down to create this workshop, Dustin asked me what is it that you wanted that you didn't have when you started private practice? And I said, I wanted somebody, because I'm a checklist person, I wanted somebody to give me a checklist, to go down the list and say, this is what you need to do, and this is the order you need to do it in. I had no problem doing the work. I was ready to do all the things I needed to do. I just didn't want to miss anything, and I didn't have that checklist. And so I said, I want to provide that to people because I think it's crazy that we don't have that.
Right. Things like business license.
Yeah, we walk through the entire process of getting a business license, how to do it, all the steps.
Right.
It's amazing. And it's fun. We had a great time at the workshop. We had great people show up. We had really wonderful feedback, lots of testimonials on the website. That was probably the best moment for me because I wanted to do something good, you know, for other people. And a couple of the testimonials said, you know, before this, I was kind of iffy on whether or not I could do this. And now I really feel like this is totally doable and I've got this. And that was the best feedback that I could have asked for.
Is this workshop a repeat of the other one, or is it like advanced?
It's not advanced. We're just running the same workshop again. We might in the future do things like advanced marketing. That was some feedback that we got. Like, we would love to hear more about the marketing piece. But we're still just in this beginning. We've improved it a little bit. In fact, we've expanded a section on with this for social workers. I don't know if you know this, but as a result of the last podcast, we actually had a couple people from the School of Social Work at UW come to the class, and I that was surprising to me because I didn't I didn't really know how to network over there. I don't have contacts over there. Most of my contacts are in, Antioch and things like that. So it was really awesome that they were there. And so we've sort of expanded some sections to be inclusive of social workers that want to start private practice. So it will be an improved upon version of last workshop, as anything would be. You run it enough times.
Right.
But it's same content.
Yeah, this is also a example. Laura is an example of someone who is not. So you're not only teaching people, but you're also an example of someone who is developing one's career in various different ways.
Yeah.
So not only private practice, obviously, and getting, so you graduated 10, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and you worked at. Eventually, you worked in eating disorder recovery clinics, and then started private practice. Started teaching at Antioch, and now you're full time at Antioch. And now you're kind of graduating to this other level where you want to champion this local private practice support and workshop, and you have a lot of goodwill towards and compassion towards people trying to start their private practice, and you, from what I understand, are providing a service to people that you wish was available for you back then.
100%.
And you're actually not charging that much, compared to like other kinds of workshops like this. So it's not like you're rolling in a bunch of dough on this, maybe eventually in the future, but for now, it's it's interesting, you get some money, but it's also this compassion thing. And the thing that I want to point out for people out there is that who are in the field or who are developing their career is there's a lot of different options, and a lot of it has to do with building your own career. There are some situations where you can get a salary job and work there, and that definitely has its thing. But the nature of our profession and the available gigs that are out there and the gigs you can just create, like this workshop, are so abundant. I don't know if there's another profession that's really like that, where like you could cobble together a career where every day of the week you're doing a different kind of gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is that way. I mean, when I look at my life currently, it's sort of like that. Some days I teach, some days I see clients, some days I work on this class, this workshop. So yeah, I mean, there's really 3 things on my plate right now, and I do something different every day. Right.
And so it's another example of someone who, took this career thing by the horns and decided to, what did you have passion about? You had passion about family therapy. Mm-hmm. You had passion about helping people in private practice starting out. You have passion about teaching. It's finding where that passion is and going for it. I was just talking with a supervisor yesterday, and her passion is couples and individuals, and so she's really accepting that, and she's like, how do I get there? And she's she believes that she can get there, and I, am going to help her, you know what I mean? So, and other people too. So it's like, here's my vision for my career. How do I get people to help me with that? And, and so the workshop is both a way for people to do that, but also an example of someone who went into private practice and built something for themselves. The workshop is essentially like an offshoot or a different version of a private practice. You have a website, you're trying to get clients, you're trying to get students to come. Yeah. It's a long-term thing. There's cash flow with the workshop. It's a meta kind of thing with that.
It's true. It's definitely a parallel.
Yeah.
A lot of similar principles applied to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Laura. Oh, I want to ask you, are you going to the WAMFT, the Washington Association of Marriage and Family Therapy Conference in September?
Oh, in the AAMFT one or the WAMFT one?
The WAMFT one. So
I'm going to AAMFT because I'm doing my supervision class there. Yeah.
Which is like where?
It's in Louisville.
Okay. And so the local chapter of the Marriage and Family Therapists, there's a conference in September. I was just wondering because
I'm sure I will go. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because Jen is in charge of it. Right?
Yeah.
But I'm doing a breakout session on how to use social media to enhance your practice.
That's great.
And so I'm kind of excited about it because it's a presentation that I could probably just talk off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that, but there's just so many different things that I feel excited about talking about.
That's awesome.
And so I'm going to talk about how people can, obviously podcast is a thing that I know about, but you can create a YouTube channel or obviously a blog or you can become a Twitter personality. Mm-hmm. To either enhance, to get clients into your practice is a big thing, but also to maybe even supplement your current clients or contribute to the field somehow, have creativity or even make money from the internet somehow, Right. So that's my breakout session, but the keynote speaker, I believe, is going to be, so the organization that I'm board president of is Game to Grow. I've talked to you about
Yep.
Yeah. So the directors, Adam Johns and Adam Davis, have been asked to at least do a breakout session, if not the keynote. And it's going to be on how therapists can use games, tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons therapeutically.
That's awesome.
With clients, yeah. And so so hopefully you can come, Laura.
Yes.
And
I'll put it on my calendar.
And other people as well. That's September 29, I believe, 2018. If you go to the Washington Association of Marriage and Family Therapy website, I'm guessing it's there.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining me, Laura. It's always great to see you. Welcome back. So you went for 3 weeks in Europe, right?
Just under 3 weeks, yes.
How was that?
Amazing. Yeah. It was wonderful.
What was some highlights?
I'd never been to Amsterdam. We spent 3 nights in Amsterdam, and what an amazing city. So rich in history, and I love architecture and design, and that's sort of my hobby, passion, if you will. If I wasn't doing this, I would just be decorating houses. So there's just so much of that there. It's just such a rich city, and in terms of the architecture and the history, and they're all happy, and it's just a cool place to be. The Van Gogh Museum was fantastic. We got the audio tour, and it took us through his life and those 10 years that he spent painting, which was phenomenal. And then we went down to France and sort of spent the rest of the time in France. So Paris is my favorite city that exists on the planet. And we spent 4 nights there and just walking around, and we didn't go to a single museum, and that's okay because we'd gone to the ones last time we were there, but we just kind of lived, just kind of wanted to feel what it would be like to live there, and watched a lot of the World Cup in cafes. Yeah.
What part of town did you stay in?
Well, that was interesting. We wanted to stay in the Marais, but we ended up over in the 7th. So we stayed at this little hotel, like 2 blocks from the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
So we got to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle, which I know is like totally lame for Parisians. They think that's ridiculous, but I think it's cool.
You gotta see it.
So yeah, it's kind of like, how often do we think about the Space Needle? We don't really ever think about it, but for tourists, I guess it's cool. So we got to sit under it and watch it sparkle a couple times because we were so close. So those are definitely some highlights. And if you can ever make it to Provence, that's a very, very cool part of France.
I've heard,
yeah. Beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah, I think Bob was talking about that. That was one of his favorite trips he's ever been on.
Yeah.
Wine country and...
Yep. And all olive trees. We went olive oil tasting, which was very cool with all the bread, and it's just amazing.
Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining us out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.